Welcome back to the channel. Today, we're going to be diving into The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
Oh, yeah, this is a good one.
Now I know what you might be thinking.
Another finance book.
Right, like how many of these do we really need?
Exactly.
But trust me, this one's different. It's less about, crunching numbers and more about understanding the often irrational ways we humans think about money.
Yeah, that's what's so interesting about this book, right? It's not your typical how-to finance guide. It explores how our past experiences, our backgrounds, even our emotions play a role in how we handle our money.
Yeah.
Sometimes for the better and sometimes not.
Right. It's not always about being the smartest person in the room.
Definitely not.
It's about understanding your own psychology and how that impacts your financial decisions.
Absolutely.
So to illustrate this point, Housel kicks off the book with a pretty wild story about this tech genius who designed a key part for Wi-Fi routers in his 20s.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
This guy was brilliant, like super successful, made a ton of money early on, but he had this weird thing about carrying around stacks of $100 bills.
Like a lot of them, right?
Oh yeah, like wads of cash.
Right.
He even once threw a bunch of money at a hotel manager just to prove he could.
Which, probably wasn't the best idea.
Yeah, as you can imagine, that kind of behavior didn't exactly lead to long-term financial stability.
Nope, not a sustainable strategy.
And surprise, surprise, he ended up going broke, proving that intelligence and financial success don't always go hand in hand.
It's a good reminder that sometimes our own behavior can sabotage our success.
Totally. And to really drive this point home, Housel contrasts this cautionary tale with the story of Ronald Read.
The janitor, right?
Yeah, the janitor who amassed an $8 million fortune over his lifetime.
It's incredible when you think about it.
I know, right? And he didn't win the lottery or strike it rich overnight. He just saved, diligently invested consistently in blue-chip stocks, and let the power of compounding work its magic over decades.
It's like the tortoise and the hare. Slow and steady wins the race.
Exactly. It's a great example of how patience and discipline can lead to remarkable results over time.
Yeah, this book really challenges that whole idea of needing to get rich quick.
It does. And speaking of long-term thinking, what are your thoughts on Housel's idea that our individual experiences shape how we view risk and reward?
Oh, that's a fascinating concept. Like someone who grew up in poverty, for example, they're going to have a different perspective on risk than someone who was raised in a wealthy family.
Right, right. Their lived experiences have shaped their beliefs about money security, what it takes to succeed in the world.
Exactly. Their definition of risk is going to be different. Their idea of what a safe investment is might be completely different.
It's a good reminder that we shouldn't judge other people's financial decisions without understanding the full context of their lives. Maybe they're being overly cautious because they've experienced financial hardship firsthand.
Or maybe they're more willing to take risks because they've seen firsthand how taking a chance can pay off big time.
Exactly. We all have our own unique financial journeys, and it's important to respect those differences. We shouldn't assume that our way is the right way or the only way.
Totally agree. It's all about finding what works for you and your circumstances.
Now, shifting gears a bit, Housel spends a good chunk of the book exploring the role of luck and risk in our lives. And he uses a really powerful example to illustrate this point, the story of Bill Gates.
Oh, yeah. Everyone knows Bill Gates, but not everyone knows the whole story.
Right. Most people know that he attended Lakeside School, which was one of the few high schools at the time that had access to a computer.
And that's a pretty big deal when you think about it. Like that one seemingly random opportunity played a huge role in his journey to founding Microsoft.
Totally. It's like he was in the right place at the right time, and he had the talent and drive to capitalize on that opportunity. But here's where it gets interesting. Housel also tells the story of Kent Evans Gates' close friend from Lakeside, who tragically died young in a mountain climbing accident.
Yeah. Oh, wow. Yeah, I remember that part. It's a reminder that even with all the talent, hard work, and good fortune in the world, life can throw some serious curveballs.
It is. We can control our actions, but we can't control every outcome.
Nope. And that's a tough pill to swallow sometimes.
It is, but it's an important reality to acknowledge. Now, I know this might sound a bit heavy, especially for a conversation about money.
It's true. Life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, even for billionaires.
Right. But I think Housel's point is that we need to recognize the role of both skill and luck in our lives. We can't just assume that success is solely based on merit, or that failure is always a result of personal shortcomings.
Yeah, it's more nuanced than that. Sometimes it's just about being in the right place at the right time.
And sometimes it's about having the resilience to bounce back from setbacks that are completely outside of our control.
Totally. And speaking of staying motivated on your financial journey, this seems like a good time to mention Affirmify Journey on YouTube.
Oh yeah, they have some great content for staying focused on your goals.
Totally. Lots of practical tips for building positive financial habits and staying inspired even when the market is throwing a tantrum.
Which, let's face it, happens more often than we'd like.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But hey, that's why we need resources like Affirmify Journey to help us stay on track.
Agreed. Okay, so back to the book. One of the concepts that really struck me was Housel's idea of defining what enough looks like. He tells these really compelling stories about Rajat Gupta, a successful businessman who went to prison for insider trading.
Oh, yeah, and Bernie Madoff too, right?
Yeah, the architect of one of the biggest Ponzi schemes in history.
It's crazy how even people who achieve incredible success can still fall prey to greed and the desire for more.
It really is. And I think that's why Housel's concept of enough is so powerful. It's about recognizing that at some point, more money doesn't necessarily equal more happiness.
Yeah, like when is it enough? When do you reach a point where you can say, okay, I'm good. I have what I need.
It's a question we should all be asking ourselves. And it's not just about money.
Yeah.
It's about our values, our priorities, how we want to spend our time and energy.
Totally. It's about figuring out what truly matters to us and then aligning our financial goals with those values.
So instead of constantly chasing more, we can focus on creating a life that is both financially secure and deeply fulfilling.
And that's a pretty awesome goal to strive for, right?
Absolutely.
So, we were talking about how our experiences really shape how we see the world, right? And I think that plays a big role in how we approach money, too.
Absolutely. Like our backgrounds can influence our risk tolerance, our investment choices, even how we define success.
Exactly. And I think it's important to remember that there's no one right way to do things when it comes to money.
It's not a one-size-fits-all kind of thing.
Nope. What works for one person might be a total disaster for someone else.
It's all about figuring out what works best for you, your individual circumstances, your goals, your comfort level with risk.
And that can change over time too, right?
Oh, absolutely. Like what made sense for you in your 20s might not be the right approach in your 40s or 60s.
Totally. Our lives change, our priorities shift, and our financial strategies need to adapt along with them.
Speaking of adapting, I think one of the biggest challenges we face in today's world is this constant pressure to keep up with the Joneses.
Oh my gosh, yes. It's like everyone's trying to outdo each other with the latest gadgets, the fanciest vacations, the biggest houses.
And social media just amplifies that pressure,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. It's like a highlight reel of everyone else's supposedly perfect lives.
Which we know is totally unrealistic.
Right. But it's easy to get caught up in that comparison game and start feeling like we're not enough.
And that can lead to some pretty bad financial decisions.
Totally. Like overspending, taking on too much debt, trying to keep up with a lifestyle that's not sustainable.
So how do we break free from this cycle of comparison and consumerism?
Well, I think Housel's concept of defining enough is really helpful here. It's about taking a step back and figuring out what truly matters to us.
What brings us joy and fulfillment?
What kind of life do we want to live?
It's about setting our own goals and priorities and not letting ourselves be swayed by what everyone else is doing.
Easier said than done, though, right?
Oh, for sure. It takes conscious effort to resist those external pressures.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's so worth it.
Yeah, when we can break free from that need to constantly chase more and more, we open ourselves up to a whole new level of contentment and freedom.
Now, speaking of freedom, one of the things that really resonated with me in the book was Housel's concept of the freedom dividend.
Oh, yeah. That's a powerful idea. It's about recognizing that true wealth isn't about having a ton of money. It's about having control over your time and choices.
It's about having the flexibility to pursue work you're passionate about, even if it doesn't offer the highest salary right away.
Exactly. It's about having the ability to spend time with loved ones, to travel, to pursue hobbies, to basically live life on your own terms.
And that freedom, that sense of autonomy, is something that money can buy.
To a certain extent, yes. But it's not just about the amount of money you have. It's also about how you manage that money and how you define your priorities.
So it's not about being rich, it's about being wealthy.
Exactly. There's a big difference.
Now, you mentioned earlier how important it is to know your own risk tolerance. And I think that ties into Housel's discussion of managing risk, which can be a really tricky concept to grasp, especially when you're first starting out with investing.
Oh, for sure. It's like everyone's talking about risk, but no one really explains what it means or how to actually manage it.
So let's break it down a bit. What are some practical tips for approaching risk management in a way that feels empowering rather than overwhelming?
Okay, well, first of all, I think it's important to remember that risk is an inherent part of life and of investing in particular. You can't avoid it entirely, but you can manage it.
It's like trying to control the weather. You can't stop the rain from falling, but you can
Yeah.
bring an umbrella.
Exactly. And just like an umbrella can protect you from getting soaked, a solid risk management strategy can help protect your investments from unexpected storms.
So what are some key elements of a good risk management strategy?
Well, I think one of the most important things is diversification. Don't
Yeah.
put all your eggs in one basket.
Spread your investments across different asset classes, different sectors, different geographies.
That way, if one area of the market takes a hit, your entire portfolio isn't wiped out.
It's like having a safety net,
Exactly. And it can help reduce the overall volatility of your portfolio.
which can be really helpful for peace of mind, especially if you're someone who tends to get anxious about market fluctuations.
Oh, absolutely. It's also important to have a plan for what you'll do when the market inevitably takes a downturn. It's easy to get caught up in the fear and panic of a market crash, but having a plan in place can help you stay calm and make rational decisions.
So it's about having a long-term perspective, recognizing that market fluctuations are normal, and having the discipline to stick to your investment plan even when things get bumpy.
Exactly. And it's about remembering that time is your greatest ally when it comes to investing. The longer your time horizon, the more likely you are to ride out those short-term fluctuations and come out ahead in the end.
Okay, so we've talked about diversification and having a plan. What are some other key aspects of risk management?
Well, I think another important factor is understanding your own risk tolerance. Some people are naturally more comfortable with risk than others, and that's totally okay.
It's not about being right or wrong. It's about knowing yourself and what you're comfortable with.
Exactly. If you're someone who tends to panic when the market dips, maybe a high growth, high volatility portfolio isn't the best fit for you. You might be better off with a more conservative approach, even if it means potentially lower returns.
It's about finding that balance between maximizing returns and minimizing stress.
Right. And it's also about being honest with yourself about how much risk you're truly willing to take.
Now, one of the things that Housel really emphasizes in the book is the importance of long-term thinking. He argues that building wealth is a marathon, not a sprint.
Absolutely. It's about patience, persistence, and a willingness to delay gratification.
It's about making those tough choices today so that you can reap the rewards tomorrow.
And it's about recognizing that the biggest gains often come from compounding over time. It's like a snowball rolling downhill. The longer it rolls, the bigger it gets.
I love that analogy. It really illustrates the power of consistency and long-term thinking.
It does. And it's a reminder that we don't have to get everything right all the time. We just need to keep moving forward, keep learning, keep growing, and stay focused on our long-term goals.
And I think that's a great message to carry with us as we continue this deep dive into the psychology of money.
Definitely. There's still so much to explore, and I'm excited to see what other insights we uncover.
So stay tuned, folks. We'll be right back after a short break.
Oh, wait, actually, there's no break this time. We're
Yeah.
just going to keep rolling right into part 3.
Oh, that's right. Well, in that case, let's dive right in.
Okay, so we're back and ready to wrap up our exploration of the psychology of money.
You know, as we've been talking about all these different concepts, one thing that keeps coming back to me is this idea of how our emotions can really mess with our financial decisions.
Oh, absolutely. Like, we think we're being all rational and logical, but so much of what we do with money is driven by our feelings.
Exactly. Like fear, greed, envy, all that stuff.
Totally. And I think Housel does a great job of highlighting how these emotions can lead us astray sometimes.
Like we make impulsive purchases or we panic sell when the market dips.
Or we get caught up in the hype of some new investment scheme that promises to make us rich quick.
Right. And then we end up regretting those decisions later on.
So how do we avoid making those emotional mistakes?
Well, I think the first step is awareness, right? Like recognizing those moments when our emotions are starting to take over.
Yeah, like being able to say, okay, I'm feeling really anxious about this investment decision. Maybe I need to take a step back and reassess.
Exactly. And sometimes that means seeking out objective advice from someone we trust, like a financial advisor or a friend who's good with money.
Yeah, having the outside perspective can be really helpful, especially when we're feeling overwhelmed or emotional.
Now, one of the things that Housel talks about in the book is this idea that saving money is actually kind of a rebellious act in today's society.
Oh, I love that. It's so true, though, right? Like, we're constantly bombarded with messages telling us to spend, spend, spend.
Buy the latest gadgets, take extravagant vacations, keep up with the Joneses.
And saving money goes against all of that. It's like saying, no, I'm not going to play your game. I'm going to define my own priorities and make choices that align with my long-term goals.
It's about choosing delayed gratification over instant gratification.
Which is not always easy.
Oh, definitely not. But it's so worth it in the long run.
It is. Like, imagine the freedom and security that comes with having a healthy nest egg. That's something that no amount of fancy gadgets can buy.
So how do we cultivate that mindset of saving in a world that's so focused on spending?
Well, I think it starts with being clear about our why. Like, why do we want to save money? What are our goals?
What are we working towards?
Exactly. Once we have that clear vision in mind, it's easier to make those tough choices about spending and saving.
And it's also about finding ways to make saving automatic right. Like setting up those regular transfers to our savings account so we don't even have to think about it.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Like, paying yourself first before you even have a chance to spend that money.
Exactly. Now, one of the concepts that I found really intriguing in the book was Housel's discussion of the compounding snowball.
Oh, yeah, that's a powerful analogy. It's about how small, consistent gains can add up to massive results over time.
Like, even if you're only investing a small amount each month, those gains start to build on each other, and eventually they create the snowball effect.
And the earlier you start, the more time that snowball has to grow.
Exactly. It's like that saying, the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today.
I love that. And it applies to investing, too. The sooner you start, the better, even if it's just a small amount.
Now, we've talked a lot about the psychological and emotional aspects of money, but Housel also touches on some practical strategies for investing.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Like, one of the things he emphasizes is the importance of keeping your investing fees low.
Because those fees can really eat into your returns over time.
Exactly. And he also talks about the power of index funds as a simple and effective way to invest in the stock market.
Index funds are basically like baskets of stocks that track a particular market index, like the S&P 500.
Right. And they're a great option for investors who want to diversify their portfolio without having to pick individual stocks.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on one more concept that really stood out to me from the book. It's this idea that money can buy happiness, but only to a certain extent.
Oh, yeah, that's an important distinction. Like, money can certainly make life easier and more comfortable.
It can reduce stress and give us more options and freedom.
But true happiness comes from things that money can't buy, like strong relationships, meaningful work, a sense of purpose.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important message to remember, especially in a society that often equates wealth with happiness.
It's a reminder that money is a tool, not a goal in itself.
Well said. And I think that's a great note to end on. So if you're looking for a book that will challenge your thinking about money and help you make more intentional choices with your finances, I highly recommend The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel.
It's a fascinating read, full of insightful stories and practical advice.
And if you're hungry for even more resources to expand your financial knowledge, be sure to check out lingopediamagazine.com Popa. They have a fantastic selection of courses and ebooks on a wide range of personal finance topics.
And of course, if you enjoyed this deep dive, please don't forget to subscribe, share, and like this podcast. We appreciate your support.
Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.